right, let's dive into DePIN, or as I've recently learned, DePIN, Decentralized Physical Infrastructure Networks.
That's it, yeah.
So basically, we're talking about using blockchain and crypto to build real-world stuff.
Yeah.
Not just like, another NFT project.
Right, exactly.
We're talking about things like wireless networks, data storage, even computing power.
Yeah, like actual physical infrastructure.
The stuff that, makes the internet and everything else actually work.
It's a pretty cool concept when you think about it.
Definitely. And the best part is, anyone can potentially get involved.
That's the beauty of decentralization, right?
Exactly. So we've got 4 really interesting DePIN projects that we're going to explore today.
Okay.
Helium, Filecoin, Arweave, and Render. Each one tackling a different piece of this whole DePIN puzzle.
Sounds good.
Let's start with Helium. They're the ones building what they call the People's Network. And it's not just a catchy slogan. They're really trying to create a wireless network that's owned and operated by, the people. Everyday folks like you and me.
Exactly. Helium's network is focused on long-range, low-power wireless coverage, primarily for Internet of Things devices.
Oh, okay. So sensors and trackers.
Yeah, all those smart devices that are popping up everywhere.
Like my smart refrigerator.
Exactly. Things like that.
So how does that actually work? Do I need to install a mini cell tower on my roof or something?
Well, not quite a full-blown cell tower, but yeah, you can host a Helium hotspot. It's a small device that provides wireless coverage in your area.
Oh, okay.
And the more coverage you provide, the more HNT you can earn.
HNT.
Helium's cryptocurrency.
Ah, okay. So it's like I'm getting paid to be part of this network.
Basically, yeah.
That's pretty cool. But how do they make sure people are actually providing coverage and not just trying to cheat the system?
Good question. Helium uses what's called a proof of coverage mechanism.
Proof of coverage.
Yeah, it's a clever system that uses radio waves to verify that hotspots are actually providing coverage.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's not just taking someone's word for it.
Exactly.
They have to actually prove it.
Right.
I did hear about those early Helium hotspot owners who made a ton of money when the network first took off.
Yeah, there are definitely some early adopters who benefited.
But Helium isn't just about IoT anymore, right?
No, they've expanded into the 5G space as well.
Okay.
Yeah, with Helium Mobile.
Helium Mobile.
Yep, it's their decentralized 5G network, and they even have a separate token for that called Mobile.
Oh, wow. So it's they're going head-to-head with the big telecom companies.
That's the idea.
That's pretty ambitious. Okay, so we've got Helium building the People's Network, offering wireless coverage for IoT devices,
right,
and even venturing into 5G.
Yep.
Pretty impressive stuff. Now let's shift gears and talk about Filecoin. They're all about decentralized storage.
Right.
But why is that such a big deal? I mean, I could just use Google Drive or Dropbox, right?
Well, those services are convenient, but with Filecoin, you have more control over your data.
Control.
Yeah, your data is stored across a decentralized network of computers. So no single entity has complete control.
Okay, I see. So it's kind of like taking back ownership of my data.
That's a good way to put it.
But how do I know that my data is actually safe on this decentralized network?
Well, Filecoin uses some really interesting mechanisms to ensure that. Things like proof of replication and proof of SpaceTime.
Proof of replication, proof of SpaceTime. Those sound complicated.
They are a bit technical, but basically they ensure that your data is copied and stored multiple times across the network, and that it's being stored continuously over time.
So it's constantly being checked and verified.
Exactly.
And it's not just sitting in one place where it could be vulnerable.
Right.
Okay, that does make me feel more secure. So Filecoin is all about decentralized storage, giving users more control over their data and ensuring that it's safe and secure through these proof of replication and proof of space-time mechanisms. Pretty cool stuff. All right, let's move on to Arweave. Now, this one is really interesting. They're talking about building the Permaweb.
The Permaweb.
Yeah, a place where data can be stored forever.
Forever.
That's the idea.
That sounds pretty ambitious.
It is. But Arweave is actually making it a reality.
Oh, wow.
They use this unique block weave technology.
Block weave.
Yeah, it's essentially a way of weaving data into a permanent and immutable record. Think of it like a digital time capsule.
Okay.
And here's the really cool part. You only pay once to store data on Arweave.
Wait, so no monthly fees or anything?
Nope, just one upfront payment.
And it's there forever.
Forever.
That's pretty amazing.
It is, right. It makes you think about all the things that could be preserved,
Yeah.
like important historical documents, scientific research, even creative works.
Like a digital library for humanity.
Exactly, a library that can never be burned down or lost.
Wow, that's a powerful image.
It is, isn't it? All right, so we've got Helium, Filecoin, and Arweave, each tackling a different aspect of DePIN. But we've got one more project to explore, Render. Now, Render is all about democratizing access to GPU computing power. GPUs, those are the things that make video games look amazing, right?
They are, but they're also used for a lot of other things like 3D rendering, video editing, artificial intelligence, even scientific simulations.
Oh, wow, I didn't realize they were used for so much.
Yeah, they're pretty versatile.
But I imagine they're also pretty expensive.
They can be, especially the high-end ones.
So how does Render make them more accessible?
Well, they've created a decentralized network where anyone can contribute their spare GPU power and earn rewards, and those who need that power can access it on demand without having to buy expensive hardware.
Oh, okay, so it's like I can rent out my GPU when I'm not using it,
Exactly.
and then someone else can use it to, like, render their 3D animation or something.
Yep, that's the idea.
That's pretty cool. It's like Airbnb for GPUs.
I like that analogy.
All right, so we've got 4 really exciting DePIN projects: Helium, Filecoin, Arweave, and Render, each one tackling a different piece of this whole decentralized infrastructure puzzle. And they're all using blockchain technology and crypto incentives to make it happen.
It's a pretty exciting space to watch.
Definitely. So we've covered a lot of ground so far, but let's take a deeper dive into each of these projects, starting with Helium in part 2 of our DePIN Deep Dive. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to our deep dive into DePIN. As promised, let's unpack Helium a bit further. Imagine this. You're contributing to a network that's changing how we connect our devices just by having a small hotspot in your home. It's kind of like being an early adopter of Wi-Fi, but instead of just your house, you're part of something much bigger.
Yeah, I like the sound of that. But how does Helium actually make money? And what's in it for the people who host these hotspots?
Good question. Helium uses a two-token system, HNT and data credits. HNT is the network's native cryptocurrency, and it's what hotspot owners earn as rewards. Data credits are used to pay for sending data over the network. Think of it like this. Hotspot owners provide the infrastructure, get paid in HNT, and the companies and developers who use the network pay for that data transfer using data credits.
So there's like a real economy built into the system,
Yeah.
with incentives for both the infrastructure providers and the users. That makes a lot of sense. But I've also heard that Helium has faced some criticism. Like, what are some of the challenges they're facing?
One challenge is network density. For the network to be truly effective, there needs to be a sufficient number of hotspots in a given area. If there are gaps in coverage, it can impact the performance and reliability of the network.
So it's kind of like the early days of cell phone coverage, where, there were all those dead zones in certain areas.
Exactly. But Helium is actively working to address this by incentivizing hotspot deployment in underserved areas and constantly improving their technology. And let's not forget about their ambitious move into 5G with Helium Mobile.
All right, Helium Mobile, they're taking on the big telecom companies, which is pretty audacious. But how does Helium Mobile actually work? Can I, ditch my current carrier and switch to Helium Mobile completely?
Helium Mobile uses a unique hybrid approach. When you're within range of a Helium 5G hotspot, you'll be using the decentralized network. But when you're outside of hotspot coverage, your phone seamlessly switches to a traditional cellular network.
So it's like having the best of both worlds, right?
Yeah.
Decentralized coverage when it's available and a fallback to traditional cellular when it's not. That's pretty clever. But what about the privacy aspect? We're always hearing about data security and privacy concerns with these mobile carriers.
That's a valid concern. With traditional mobile carriers, your data travels through centralized infrastructure, making it potentially vulnerable to interception or tracking. Helium Mobile's decentralized approach, combined with their commitment to user privacy, offers a more secure and private alternative. They're even partnering with companies that specialize in privacy-enhancing technologies to further strengthen their offering.
Oh, okay. That's reassuring to hear. Okay, so Helium is definitely an intriguing project with a lot of potential, even though it's still early days and there are challenges to overcome. Now, let's shift our attention to Filecoin, which, if you remember, is tackling decentralized storage. What's the big picture here? Why should someone choose Filecoin over traditional cloud storage providers?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Filecoin is all about giving individuals and organizations more control over their data. With traditional cloud storage, your data is essentially held captive by a single company. With Filecoin, you're storing your data across a vast, decentralized network, making it much more resilient to censorship, outages, and even data loss.
So it's like having a backup of my backup, right? Spread across a whole network of computers, which sounds incredibly secure. But how does Filecoin actually guarantee that my data is being stored safely and not just, disappearing into the digital ether?
Filecoin's proof of replication and proof of SpaceTime mechanisms are key here. Proof of replication, as we talked about earlier, ensures that your data is copied and stored multiple times across the network. Proof of SpaceTime takes things a step further. It requires storage providers to continuously prove that they are actually storing your data over time.
So it's not just a one-time check. It's like an ongoing verification process.
Yep.
That's pretty impressive. But let's be honest, this all sounds a bit technical. How user-friendly is Filecoin for someone who isn't, a tech expert?
Filecoin is still evolving in terms of user-friendliness. The underlying technology is quite sophisticated, which can be a barrier for entry for non-technical users. However, there are a growing number of companies and projects building user-friendly interfaces and applications on top of Filecoin, making it easier for everyday people to access and use decentralized storage.
So it's getting there, kind of like how the early internet was, like clunky and hard to use. But then things like, web browsers and search engines made it accessible to the masses.
Exactly, and we're seeing a similar trend with Filecoin. It's still early, but the potential is there for it to become the go-to solution for secure, decentralized data storage.
Filecoin is definitely a project to watch. Now let's move on to Arweave, which is tackling the fascinating concept of the Permaweb, a place where data can be stored forever. Can you break down how this store once, access forever model actually works? It sounds almost too good to be true.
It does sound like magic, doesn't it? But Arweave has designed a system that makes it possible. Their blockweave technology is key here. It's a unique data structure that ensures data redundancy and permanence. Think of it as weaving a tapestry where each thread represents a piece of data. Even if one thread breaks, the tapestry remains intact.
Okay, that's a great analogy. So even if one part of the network fails, my data is still safe because it's replicated and woven into this permanent blockweave structure.
Precisely. And because the cost of storage is paid up front, there's no need for ongoing fees or subscriptions. That's how Arweave can offer this pay once, store forever model.
So I could store, say, my family photos or important documents on Arweave and know that they'll be accessible to my children and grandchildren, even generations from now. That's a powerful idea.
It's about preserving our digital heritage, ensuring that information remains accessible and tamper-proof for centuries to come. Arweave is already being used to archive important historical documents, scientific data, and even creative works. It's like building a digital library of Alexandria that can never be burned down.
Wow, a library that can't be burned down. That's a powerful image. But what are the downsides? There have to be some limitations or challenges with this approach, right?
One challenge is retrieval speed. Retrieving data from Arweave can sometimes be slower compared to traditional storage solutions because the focus is on permanence rather than speed. And while the pay once, store forever model is appealing, the upfront cost can be relatively high, especially for storing small amounts of data.
So it's probably not the best solution for storing everyday files that I need to access quickly, but it's perfect for those things that I want to preserve for the long haul, like, family photos, important documents, or even creative works that I want to share with future generations.
Exactly. It's about choosing the right tool for the job. For quick access and everyday storage, traditional cloud solutions might be a better fit. But for permanent, tamper-proof storage, Arweave is in a league of its own.
Arweave is definitely a project with a lot of potential, especially for those who value data preservation and long-term accessibility. Now let's turn our attention to Render, our final DePIN project for today, which is making expensive GPU power more accessible. Can you remind us why GPUs are so important and how Render is making them more accessible?
GPUs are the workhorses of the computing world, especially for anything that requires intensive graphical processing like 3D rendering, video editing, artificial intelligence, and scientific simulations.
Okay, so they're those super powerful chips that make video games look amazing, and they're also used for a lot of other things that require a lot of processing power.
Exactly. But high-end GPUs can be incredibly expensive, which can be a barrier for entry for individuals, small businesses, and even researchers who might not have the budget for a top-of-the-line setup.
So how does Render solve this problem? You mentioned earlier that it's like Airbnb for GPUs. Can you explain that a bit further?
Render has created a decentralized network where people who have spare GPU power can contribute it to the network and earn rewards in the form of Render tokens. And those who need GPU power can access it on demand, paying for it with those same Render tokens.
So it's like a marketplace where GPU power is the commodity being traded. That's brilliant. But how does it actually work in practice? Let's say I'm a 3D artist who needs some extra GPU power to render a complex animation. How would I use Render?
It's actually quite simple. Render has integrated with popular 3D rendering software like Octane Render and Blender.
Yeah.
So you can seamlessly connect to the Render network directly from your software and start using those decentralized GPUs to speed up your rendering process.
So I don't need to buy expensive hardware or set up any complicated software. I can just tap into this network and get the power I need when I need it. That's pretty incredible. But what about security and reliability? How can I be sure that my data is safe and that the rendering process will be reliable on this decentralized network?
Render has implemented robust security measures to ensure that your data is protected and that the network is reliable. They have a reputation system for both GPU providers and users, so you can see who has a good track record.
So it's like a trust system that helps ensure quality and reliability within the network. That makes a lot of sense. Render sounds like it's a game changer for anyone who needs access to powerful GPUs, but doesn't want to shell out a ton of money on expensive hardware. It's democratizing access to this valuable resource, which is amazing. Now, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. We've explored 4 fascinating DePIN projects: Helium for decentralized wireless networks, Filecoin for decentralized storage, Arweave for the Permaweb, and Render for decentralized GPU power.
We've seen how DePIN is leveraging blockchain technology and crypto incentives to build a more decentralized, secure, and accessible future for our digital world. We've explored how these projects are disrupting traditional industries, empowering individuals, and creating new possibilities for innovation.
It's clear that DePIN is still in its early stages, but the potential is enormous. We've talked about the challenges and the risks, but we've also seen how DePIN is solving real-world problems and creating opportunities for those who are willing to embrace this new frontier. But our journey into DePIN isn't over yet. We have one more exciting project to discuss, one that takes us beyond the realm of terrestrial infrastructure and into the vast expanse of space. Stay tuned for part 3, where we will discuss SpaceChain. It's a project that could change how we connect with the world and beyond. All right, so welcome back to our DePIN Deep Dive. We've been talking about all these amazing projects happening here on Earth. But now, as promised, we're going to blast off and explore a project that's taking DePIN to a whole other level. Literally,
SpaceChain, yeah, they're basically trying to build a blockchain-based satellite network.
Wait, hold on. So they're putting, actual blockchain nodes in space.
Yep, that's the idea.
On satellites.
On satellite.
That's mind-blowing.
It is pretty wild.
I mean, we've been talking about decentralized networks on the ground, but taking it to space, that's some next-level stuff.
It is. It's a whole new frontier.
So, okay, I'm trying to wrap my head around this. Why would you want to put blockchain nodes on satellites? What's the advantage of that?
Well, think about it this way. Most of our critical infrastructure, like communication networks, financial systems, all that stuff, it's all based here on Earth, right?
Yeah.
Which means it's vulnerable to all sorts of things, natural disasters, cyber attacks, you name it.
Oh, okay, I see.
But if you put those nodes on satellites in space, suddenly you have a network that's much more resilient.
Because it's not dependent on any single point of failure.
Exactly. It's like having a backup system for the entire internet.
Floating in space.
Floating in space.
That's incredible. Okay, so I get the whole resilient thing. But what are some of the practical applications of a decentralized satellite network? What can you actually do with it?
Oh, the possibilities are huge. For starters, you could provide secure and reliable communication channels for remote areas, places with limited or no internet access.
Oh, right, like remote villages or ships at sea.
Exactly. You could also use it to enhance the security of financial transactions.
Especially in places with underdeveloped banking infrastructure.
Yep. And you could even create tamper-proof data storage solutions.
for things like, I don't know, medical records or scientific research data.
Exactly. It's all about leveraging the unique advantages of space-based infrastructure.
So it's not just about connectivity, it's about security, accessibility, and creating a more resilient digital world.
Exactly.
Wow, SpaceChain is really pushing the boundaries here.
They're pioneers in this space.
Okay, so we've explored Helium, Filecoin, Arweave, Render, and now SpaceChain. 5 incredible DePIN projects, each tackling a different challenge. And they're all using blockchain technology and crypto to create a more decentralized and resilient future. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling pretty optimistic.
Me too. It's an exciting time to be following this space.
Definitely. Well, folks, that's it for our DePIN deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground, from wireless networks to space-based infrastructure, and I hope you've learned as much as I have. If there's one thing to take away from all of this, is that DePIN is more than just a bunch of cool technologies. It's a movement. It's a vision for a future where we have more control over our digital lives, where our data is secure and access to essential resources is more equitable and accessible.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So stay curious, keep exploring, and who knows, maybe you'll even become a part of this DePIN revolution. Thanks for joining us on this journey, and until next time, keep on diving deep.